As the semester progressed, everyone in the class has dedicated hours to reading, journaling, and reflecting so they can become better readers. Today I want to take 10 minutes of your time to discuss how I have grown as a reader. The areas in which I think I have improved the most this semester are my skepticism or identification of fallacies, as well as my close reading abilities. Identifying fallacies is a very important skill because not only does it help me discern whose voice I should be listening to in others' works, but it also builds my credibility as I identify my own and correct them so that my voice can be heard and respected in the world. Moore is one person that does a terrible job with his argument, as he goes way over the line of the puppet master. As I was analyzing a scene where he uses a particularly large amount of pathos, and he films a child crying over the death of his mother, he goes way overboard with the pity. As I wrote about it, I decided that his obvious intention was the pity for the family, he wanted people also to feel indignation at the companies who are profiting off of the death. Now, while he may have had an argument or may not have had, I thought that it actually damaged his argument more than helped, because the audience felt manipulated instead of sympathetic toward the family. It damages his credibility because it makes it feel like he is not being honest, and he is choosing just the right moment, just the right time of the children crying, so people will feel bad for them, especially during a moment of hurt. Now, I want to learn from his logical fallacies and not use them in my own writing. I want to be really honest with my character and my words in my writing, which is why I want to say that one thing I've particularly struggled with this semester is identifying the fallacies in my own work. Coming from Miss Scott's class, where she spends 20 to 30 minutes on each essay, it was difficult coming into where the writing process is completely different and using classroom. She always returned papers practically vandalized with notes on sentences and areas where my arguments could be improved. It is a lot different from the comments in this class. On the final draft of the Steinbeck versus Hansberry paper, I only received 2 comments, only one of which was criticizing on how I could be better. And it said that I should connect my rhetorical analysis quotes to make a more cohesive point by possibly using partial quotes. Now, this was extremely frustrating for me at first, because I had no idea which quotes should be partial, or which parts didn't connect very well, and it was difficult for me to figure out. However, it forced me to go back through my paper and reread multiple times so that I could identify which quotes needed to be fixed and how I could improve my own writing, instead of having it being told to me by a teacher. As I went through my paper, I found one particular quote that seemed good at the time I wrote it, but now seems too long. As I was trying to argue how the author showed that Walter's values were changing from money to his family, I said, Walter changes his mind about selling the house and tells Lindner what he truly thinks of his family. That's my sister over there, and she's going to be a doctor, and we are very proud. And that this is my son, and he makes the 6th generation of our family in this country. The quote had the right idea, but it was extremely long, and it didn't need to go, and it had a lot of unnecessary parts in it. It is important for me to review my own work, and it's a great skill to be able to figure out which parts are unneeded and how to identify my own arguments, and which is a new skill that I haven't worked on previously. I know it has improved, evidently, since the Of Mice and Men paper, since in that paper, on the first draft, I had to rewrite for the second draft over half the paper because my arguments weren't sound. This paper, however, I was able to identify most of the fallacies in my arguments and fix them before I turned in the first draft, so I only had to do minor revisions for the rest of the paper. Another skill I have been working on this semester that I have improved is my close reading ability. Specifically, I've been able to identify word choices and the importance of it. At the beginning of the year, I believed that the most complex and longest words were the most important in a piece. However, I learned that that is not the case. Every word is important. Every word contributes equally to the tone. As I was reading Of Mice and Men, I noticed some specific words comparing Lenny to an animal. It said that his hands were like paws, he had sloping shoulders, and he had a shapeless face, like many animals look to people of the same species. And also, he threatened to go live in a cave instead of a town like a normal person. As I reflected upon this quote and the possible purpose, I noticed that the book undertook a whole new meaning with the animal symbolism and caused me to ask deeper questions about the book. Like, why compare the most innocent and gentle character to a wild and savage animal? And what does the comparison say about human nature as the person who is least likely to manipulate other people? These questions helped me analyze the book deeper and think differently about the book than if he had just used words like normal hands or Lenny threatened to just go live in a town instead of a cave. Similarly, I have grown in choosing my own words like this so I could hopefully improve the symbols and metaphors in my own writing by using different words. In Raisin in the Sun, I noticed one time that perhaps was repeated as Agassi was talking to Beneatha about the future. He said that he repeated perhaps through multiple phrases, and he built his point and emphasized the unpredictability of the future. And he also set a tone of uncertainty. In my reflection, I put the word on trial for its life. Perhaps seemed like such a simple word, yet it was the perfect word to use for the situation. Not only does it reflect his background and the informality of the scene, but it also gave the desired uncertain tone and ambiguous tone, and the certain emotion that went with the word perhaps. This is the kind of word choice that I want to emulate in my writing also. Just changing one verb or one adjective can do wonders for the paper and change it and either hurt the style or help it. My close reading skills have also improved in my analysis of rhetorical strategies. At the beginning of the year, the first rhetorical analysis paper I wrote was awful because I hardly even knew what a strategy was. However, now I have a list of different strategies I look for in my head, and I can breeze through a paper and mark multiple things throughout it. For example, in my New York American Dream piece from 1951, I noted a particular tree metaphor comparing the ideal of democracy to a tree. I wrote, "Trees are known as being powerful and stable, and they provide shelter and nutrition for many species. The comparison causes the reader to look favorably on democracy and feel patriotic for using such a great system. Like a tree, democracy is a powerful and stable idea that has survived for decades. It has given people the ability to live and prosper after it found favorable soil in America." Now, while before it was difficult to figure out why the author would have used a tree metaphor instead of something else, I can now easily identify the similarities and differences between democracy and a tree, and figure out why the author would use that particular one. Trees are very powerful and stable, and give life to many things, just like democracy does. And similarly, trees have a connotation of life, and the connotation carries over to democracy when it is compared to it in the metaphor. It contributes to the tone and effect of the piece. In my AP practice essays, I feel like my ability in identifying rhetorical strategies like that metaphor has improved greatly. Although in my essays my organization is below par, and I often get points off for that because I organize it by strategy, I will change that in the future, and overall my ability to identify the strategy and its effect has developed well over the course of the year. Overall, I think my reading skills have dramatically improved my communication and writing with other people and in my works. I learned what I should and should not do through reading other people's and watching things like Michael Moore's capitalism video or the symbolism of mice and men, and the specific word choice and rhetorical strategies of Raisin in the Sun. I'll try to read more this semester, hopefully, so I can continue to grow in being a close reader, and hopefully, in turn, become a better writer to communicate with the world better.